It's been so incredibly dry and hot recently, and so in this 10-day trend I'm on the hunt for some rain. When is it going to return? Well, let's start off looking at this probability plot. In case you've not seen it before, we're looking at the next 2 weeks, and the different colours indicate the most likely pressure setup that we'll have around the UK. The deep reds going with this high pressure sitting just to the north of us, and you can see for the next, well, week, if not more, that looks set to be the most dominant pattern, and with high pressure sitting just to the north, well, we'd stick with the largely dry weather. Then through towards the very end of this 10-day period, there are signs of something more changeable, some more blues indicating that we could have lower pressure nearby, but really it's not a case that that's a guarantee, not at all. It's really just that confidence decreases, as you would expect, the further we look ahead. So it just means there's a greater chance that we see something more changeable and just less likely for the high pressure to dominate as it is going to through much of the next week. We can look at that in a slightly different way on this chart here. It's a Hofmöller. If you've not seen it before, I'll try and explain what it shows. And we're going through time from top to bottom. This is the past, this is the future below this black horizontal line, and the UK is here on this cross, really. That's because we're looking from west to east. And the different colours indicating the pressure pattern, the oranges showing where we've had high pressure and where we're forecasting high pressure. So we can see, looking back in time, the high pressure that brought the exceptional heat during late June for the UK here, and then higher pressure through large chunks of July so far, which have brought heatwave conditions, temperatures in excess of 30 Celsius through most days. Then looking ahead, and whilst we are likely to see the high pressure currently around us waning and drifting a bit away towards the west for a little while, for a couple of days, as we go through, well, I'm hiding the axis, but as we go through later into next week, signs that it could return and push back in from the west. But towards the very end of the week, Friday, Saturday, next week, the 25th, that's when we could start to see it waning away, and that's when we could see something more changeable. So there are signs that we could see the high pressure clearing and some wetter weather, but it's not a guarantee, and it's going to take quite a while to do so. But let's look at what we have currently over us. And well, the jet stream is way to the north of us. We have high pressure sitting just to the north of the UK, and this is important, the position of the high, because yes, it's bringing lots of settled weather, but it is also bringing a bit of an easterly flow. So that's dragged in some low cloud from the North Sea through many days, but it's also brought some very warm air or hot air at times. Now, that high pressure is going to wane and ease, but then we end up with high pressure sitting to the northwest of us as we go into this weekend. And what that will then allow is for that jet stream to push down from the north, and so we'll see a slight shift in our wind direction. We'll get a bit more of a northerly flow coming through, and that's going to lead to most places, not everywhere, but most places seeing a drop in their temperatures. We can look at that in a slightly different way if we look at our trajectories. So what I have here, we're looking at where the air in the 1,000 metres closest to the surface, where it's come from in the preceding few days. And for this one, I've picked London, and this is where the air for today has been coming from, so this Wednesday. And what we can see, if we follow the tracks, and the different colours are indicating different heights where the air ends up, and so the purples are near the surface and the yellows are 1,000 metres up. And what we can see is the air currently coming towards London is wrapping around from the Atlantic, going to the north of the UK, over Scandinavia, and then coming back from an easterly direction, picking up some of the heat across the near continent. It has been very hot here, heatwave conditions over parts of France, for example, and then coming towards the UK. And so it is relatively warm air going through a slightly colder period, but then hitting into some of this hotter air before coming towards the UK. And also worth highlighting, we can see it in this chart here, the air is actually sinking a little bit as it comes towards us, and it's that process of sinking that leads to the air being compressed and leads to the temperature of the air also rising, and that's why temperatures at the moment are on the hot side. But if we look at the same chart, but this time looking at the air that's coming towards London for this Sunday, and well, it paints a very different picture with that jet stream piling down from the north, We're instead going to be getting our air from a much cooler, colder direction, and then it's coming just directly down on that northerly, so it doesn't really have the chance to heat up the same, and the air isn't sinking as much as it comes towards us as well, so it's not warming up for that reason. Now, the change isn't going to be that drastic because there's still going to be plenty of sunny weather around, but nonetheless, for many, it is going to feel a little bit fresher. Another reason why it's going to feel a little bit fresher is because, well, I mentioned that at the moment we're tapping into some of that hot air across parts of Europe, but the heat wave, the exceptional heat over parts of Western Europe at the moment, that's edging its way further southwards. So instead of affecting mainly France, it's pushing into eastern parts of Spain, more into northern parts of Africa through the weekends. So we're going to feel less of the influence of this hot air as well, because that's edging further away. But let's look at the details for each day. I'll run through this. This is the 10-day trend. Don't want to go into too much detail, but let's try and find where there will be a bit of rain. Thursday, well, it's a sort of rinse and repeat day compared to today, really. There could be some low cloud, first of all, but a lot of that will burn away into the afternoon, so largely sunny for many of us. And again, temperatures are just about getting into the low 30s. It could quite easily be the 12th day where we see somewhere in the UK having temperatures in excess of 30 Celsius. Depends on if we actually do that today. We haven't at the time of recording, but temperatures are still rising. Still down the eastern side, a little bit fresher. Temperatures high teens, low 20s, that kind of thing. Later on Thursday, there is the potential that we could see 1 or 2 showers developing in the southwest. Whether or not they develop, a bit uncertain, but just worth highlighting that. And then we start to see some low cloud drifting in from the North Sea like we have done through some recent nights. Looking ahead to Friday, and the potential, as we get a bit more of a northerly, potential for a few outbreaks of rain affecting mainly eastern parts of Scotland. But rain really is very limited through this 10-day period. Otherwise, it's looking largely dry for many of us. Lots of sunshine again. With that northerly and that slight shift in our wind direction, temperatures down ever so slightly. I still think we'll get to 28 or 29. 30's not out of the question, but it could well be, depending on what's happened on Wednesday and Thursday, could well be the first day for quite a while where nowhere in the UK has exceeded 30 Celsius. Notice actually, with that slight shift in wind direction, Edinburgh is starting to see temperatures creeping up. It's been a little cool here because of that easterly that's coming in and has been dragging in some low cloud and that breeze from the North Sea. So actually some northeastern areas will start to see temperatures rising through this weekend. More on that in a second. Later on Friday, we do need to watch out for the potential for a few showers to develop across some southern southeastern parts. And if they do, well, there could be a rumble of thunder mixed in with them as well. But with showers, with any downpours that we see with those, that's not the sort of rain that we need to help alleviate the ongoing issues from how dry it's been. Short bursts of intense rain, well, they don't bring a huge amount of relief. Into Saturday, and we have more of that northerly coming in now, so a few outbreaks of rain look quite likely across parts of Scotland. Further south, dry, largely sunny, and temperatures, yes, down compared to Thursday, Friday for many places in the south, but still very warm in the sunshine, if not hot really in many people's minds. Still technically heatwave conditions for some places, particularly towards the southwest. And notice I highlighted Edinburgh earlier, but yes, temperatures here creeping up a little bit higher as well, so 22, possibly 23 Celsius. A few outbreaks of rain may just about clip some North Sea coastal parts through the day and into the evening on Saturday, but yes, most places staying dry. Then on Sunday, outbreaks of rain coming in from the north. They don't look especially heavy, but it could be a bit damp at times across northern parts of Scotland in particular. They will arrive through the morning and continue into the afternoon. Elsewhere it's largely dry, 1 or 2 showers maybe in the southwest, but yes, largely dry again. Lots of sunshine, but temperatures again creeping down for most places, mid-20s in the south really at highest. But again in the north, parts of Edinburgh for example, just highlighting it again, temperatures could get into the low to mid-20s here, so a little bit higher than they have been recently. More showery rain coming down from the north through Sunday evening. Elsewhere, most places staying largely dry. Now, I did say we're on the hunt for some rain, so really we need to look at how that high pressure that we have dominating our weather is going to break down. And in order to get an idea of that, let's look the other side of the Atlantic. Over eastern parts of the US at the moment, we have some hot conditions. And with that, then we're likely to see some severe convection, some intense thundery downpours developing. And when that happens, well, that has the potential to develop an area of low pressure. So through this weekend, early part of next week, we could see this area of low pressure developing, coming off the eastern side of the US and then making its way over the Atlantic. And that could then influence the high pressure that's to the west of the UK. It's this high pressure that's going to dominate really through much of next week. But this area of low pressure is likely to come across and start to weaken this high pressure a little bit, but because this high is so well established, it's not going to, well, it's unlikely to make a huge dent in it. If anything, it will probably just nudge it a bit further south, allowing for a system to come over the north to topple in. And then that could bring something more changeable, more unsettled into at least northern parts through the latter stages of next week, the weekend, so the 25th, 26th of July, that kind of time frame. So it's still a way off, and confidence that far ahead, well, not especially high, but that's one possibility. That's the most likely scenario, really. Let's look at next week then in a bit more detail, and high pressure is still most likely to be firmly in control most days. Here's the most likely setup for Monday, and I've put the rainfall anomaly, the oranges, showing it's likely to be significantly drier than average for much of the UK this coming Monday. High pressure likely to sit to the west of us. I've got the second and third most likely setups here. They're fairly similar, still high pressure nearby, and the percentage chance of those much lower, 86%. So that's pretty high confidence for this high pressure sitting just to the west of us. Similar picture for this Tuesday. The percentage chances drop down as you would expect. It's a day further ahead, but worth highlighting the second and third most likely setup. Still going with the idea of generally dry and also high pressure firmly in control just where it's sitting. That's the detail slightly changes. By Wednesday, perhaps seeing the high waning a little bit towards the southwest and clearing a little bit, but still generally dry. And worth mentioning that the second most likely setup still has that high pressure well and truly across the UK. So not overly confident that that high is going to clear a little bit. Thursday's quite similar, still high pressure nearby, but perhaps a greater chance that it will start to be clearing away. And by Friday, well, the most likely setup has a sort of in-between high and low pressure of sorts. And so then that could start to allow for something more changeable to come through. But we're only going with around a 15% chance of that, so not particularly high at all. And still the second most likely chance, still only 12%, so that's not particularly high. But that does have high pressure coming in from the southwest, extending from the Azores. So then we could stay mostly dry. Now, let's look at similar charts, but this time highlighting temperature changes. And sticking with this high pressure idea for Monday, a good idea that we're going to stick with warmer air, at least across western parts, could be a bit fresher than average across the east. Kind of similar to what we've had through much of this week, really. Similar story for Tuesday, but by Wednesday, that's when we start to see some differences. Warmer than average, most likely, but not a guaranteed. Potential that we could see if that high pressure drifts away towards the southwest could allow a bit of a fresher air to come in from the northwest. And then by Thursday, similar story, but perhaps a greater chance of seeing that slightly fresher air coming in from the northwest. And by Friday, well, again, highlighting it's only a 15% chance, but this does indicate that we could start to see something a little bit cooler, not a guarantee by any means. Another way that we can look at our temperature trends, let's take London, for example, and this is our plot looking at our temperatures for the next, where are we at, 10 days. And what you can see is temperatures are likely to dip down, as I mentioned, a little bit for this weekend, with that bit more of a northerly flow coming in, so temperatures dropping a little bit, but then creeping back up through next week. And by the end of the week, there's a relatively large spread, so not huge confidence, but still potentially, I mean, it could get a bit hotter again, or it could be a little bit cooler by the end of the week. Let's look at Edinburgh, though. I've highlighted it a couple of times because the plot is very different to London's, really. Temperatures don't drop down here through the weekend. They actually creep up a little bit, and then they're likely to continue to creep it up through next week, not really dropping down until the back end of next week. So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. And then in the interest of impartiality, here's Belfast, Leeds and Cardiff. Their plots are relatively similar to London, really. Temperatures quite high at the moment, dropping down a little bit for the weekend, and then a gradual rise a bit through next week. So yeah, temperatures staying around or probably above average for many places. And as I said, rainfall, there's not really a huge amount of it to come. I've tried to highlight when there will be some and tried to pick out when we're likely to see a bit more of a change. But really, if you're hoping for some significant rain, then unfortunately it's not great news. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.